Hello, hello.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the third and final time, I believe you can now hear me. And, okay, still no Eric? I think there's Eric now. So wait a second. Everyone hold the line. I'm still holding. There we go. Now, for the third and final time, welcome to the archives. My name is Eric, and today we have Kez here with us to talk about Treasure, her wonderful golden tiefling darling. Quick update about streaming schedules. We have on Friday Diablo 3, where you can watch some of our amazing people. I think it's Cody, Meg, Wisser, I think Caitlin as well are going to be playing Diablo 3 on Sunday. Wizard does. This is on Sunday. We have Mass Effect Andromeda, which is great. It's a great game, and we've been having that go on for quite some time. So definitely stop in, see Wizard play that. On Monday, we have one of my favorite things, which is Disasters in Danger, our weekly D&D game, which we are going to be talking about what happened last week today. Tuesday, we have a variety stream, which I'm unsure of specifically what we're going to be doing, so definitely hop in and check it out. And then on Wednesday, we have Malifaux, which is our new tabletop that we're starting. I think we just did character creations for it either last week or the week before. So I think this is gonna might be one of the first gameplay days, and it's a really great system. I really cannot wait for the story to start. Like the story to start and pick up on this. It's great. Couple of quick announcements. We want to thank Norse Foundry for being our lovely dice buddies. Norse Foundry is sponsoring the Disasters and Danger show on Monday, and we actually have a little code. It's right there. It's REPRPG. It gets you 15% off your order at NorseFoundry.com. Now, it might not seem like a lot, but 15% on like $100 set of. Oh, see, just that's. Is that some of the aluminum dice?
This is some of their metal dice. This is what I typically use for treasure. It
Mm
is
hmm.
the Pirate's Gold.
It is, and that's just fantastic. It really is, and they have incredible quality stuff. So if you're headed over there and you're going to buy something, just be sure to use REP RPG because it is. I mean, 15% off. You don't think it's a lot, but when you think like some of their dice can be like $100 for a set, like that's you're taking off $15 right there. It amounts. It's really worthwhile. But let's get started. Kez, did you have any announcements you wanted to get through?
Hi, yeah. I've been asked a couple times about the artwork, of course, that premieres every so often that you guys will see in the art reel and things like that. If I take commissions, the answer is yes, I do take commissions. If you're curious, all you have to do is contact me via Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook under Critical Kes, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Or if you're part of the Discord because you have subscribed and all that good stuff, once again, just contact me. I'm easy enough to find on the Discord and we can work something out.
All right. So let's start talking about last Monday. So, to pick it up, last Monday we pick up with just escaping the Knoll, not Knoll, the Hobgoblin encampment, where I want to say I am super impressed we were able to get away with only killing one guy, like the one guard kill. Like I thought that was going to be bloody. I thought that was going to be, I thought we were going to go full murder hobo. I don't know what you. I know you weren't. I don't think you weren't there for that specific one. So I thought we were going to go bad, and it went pretty nicely.
I mean, from the sounds of it, it had all the opportunities to go absolutely south.
Oh.
I was not there, but I did catch up later via the archives. So
Always a good way if you miss a show to catch up. We do a pretty succinct coverage, and then we talk for a little bit afterwards. Um, so the good news is, so we had a caravan that was attacked, and we were able to get out 13 people, and I think there were a total of 15, and 2 passed away, and that was only in the initial attack. So everyone was still alive, and so we got them out, and we started making our way towards the Warden's Tower. Now, we know that the other part of our expeditionary group is already over the mountains. So we're trying to catch up to them, but the Warden's Tower is going to be a good place to rest up and get supplies back, which will be nice. Now, Kez, Treasure had a bit of a moment where we were coming out of the forest and just a bunch of like malnourished folks who've been, tucked away for about a month, not being able to sleep, where you wanted to just run up and just protect. Tell me about that. Like what was going through your head or Treasure's head?
Treasure in general, yes, she is absolutely a wild child, as we've seen for many things in the story, but she's also about people. She is very much the protector, and she will definitely throw herself in the way. And currently, she's feeling a lot of guilt for what happened because of the connection with this attack and the Pale Brothers. So she's well aware that this probably has something to do with the bounty on her head from her parents, or not even her parents, if I remember correctly. It was actually from her fiance or her fiance's family who had set this bounty up. So in her mind, 2 people just died and 13 people have suffered immensely and have been tortured because of her. So she has two instincts at that point, and one is that immense amount of guilt, which we see a little bit later. But immediately it was that I'm going to get my hands on whoever caused this and tear them in two.
And with any luck, we're gonna have that shot. Um, Now it is, I mean, it is always something to notice, and even in real life, the dichotomy of someone's feelings about a choice they made and how it affected other people. Now, for you specifically, for Treasure, like the choice she made to run away, is a very big choice, and it's very much. I mean, I think a lot of us would agree, depending on your cultural upbringing, it's the right choice. Because for a lot of us, arranged marriages aren't really a thing that we're familiar with, but for a lot of people, it's still entirely a thing that happens. But it's that interesting dichotomy for Treasure because she feels guilt for making the choice that led to this, but it's not her actions that have caused this. It's the actions of a spited almost lover, maybe is a way to say it. Like the spited almost husband, because it's his actions that are causing it, but Treasure still feels like she's that initial push, which is, it's kind of, I mean, I think we've all felt that in a way that, I may not be actively doing something that's bad, but is it because of something I did? And I think that's an interesting headspace to be in a lot for, especially for a character like Treasure, who was so who was so action oriented, who was so do and then possibly think about consequences later. But just like, you know what? We need to go and we need to go to a spa. We need to play strip poker with a beholder. Like these things are the immediacy, and it's that thought, that action.
Which, like you said, it is a very interesting thing for a character like Treasure because she is very much about the action and the do, and to hell with the consequences. So now facing some of those consequences is
Yeah.
a very interesting place to put her. And the funniest part about this is we don't even know if it's the fiance himself that has sent it out or the fiance's family. Of course, in this kind of a style of era, it's not even necessarily just her and the fiance that are involved. It's her family and the fiance's family taking this much less like a romantic anything, as of course she has never met Owen Duskwood. But the Duskwoods and the Nightcrafters did make a contract, so it is less of a romance and more of a business deal.
And that is, gosh, business, isn't it the best sometimes? All right. Then after we you had that moment, we were getting ready to leave, and I know that you and Saride had a really nice moment, the two of you, exploring that in a real way, which was it was a very nice moment. It was very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it was the whole idea of consequence once again for the actions that we do, and what actually is and isn't her fault. And it does bring a lot of gray areas of some of the things Treasure does into perspective, because like you said, generally the folks watching at home, I assume, would agree with Treasure that running away during this wedding was probably the correct thing to do, especially with a very adventurous and wild mindset like Treasure's, where her whole point is she wants to be remembered in history for something other than being some nobleman's wife or some great trade prince's mother. Like, she wants to actually make her own niche in history, and that can't exactly be accomplished if you're just a noble wife. It's
Yeah.
much harder to do, especially in the way that she does it, which is getting her hands dirty, literally taking on beasts, and as you said, playing strip poker with beholders.
Oh my God. This reminds me of I cannot remember where I want to say it's in somewhere, it's in like Eastern European. Um, you're reminding when you said it's hard to kind of be that like remembered history person when you're just a nobleman's wife. And I forget, and I mean, only to your point, I forget the name or but what happened, this woman, it was crazy. She was like a nobleman's wife, same sort of thing, and her husband was killed, and she had this like big army around her. Like she had this big army, and she went to the town where like this woman was like malicious, but in a like weird villainous sort of way, because she went to this town and she's like, I will spare this town, but all you must do is everyone in this town must bring me a bird. And so like everyone in this town is just like, shit, we're gonna get off this easy. And so they all bring her birds, and she has her um like servants or like her attendants tie a piece of phosphorus to the bird's legs and then set the birds free. The birds fly back to the houses, which are all wooden thatch houses at this point in time, and the phosphorus ignites and the houses, and she just like raises the entire town. But like that's sorry, when I hear, I'm thinking of like badass women of history, and I like that moment of the ultimate revenge, like that sort of thing, and the like, yes, 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 I will spare you, I will forgive you, I will never do that, like that sort of moment. Uh,
Yeah, that's some chaotic evil level of this is where that's a level treasure don't go.
no, obviously, but I just like for some reason when you're like remembered noble women, I was just like, I remember this thing, like this history little nugget. Um, so after that, we get the people together and we start traveling. We had a long travel to get through. It was like 13 or 14 days of travel with, God damn it, Mars, you are exactly right. It is Princess Olga of Kiev. I, wow. Soulmate. I mean, I know you and you guys whatever, but like me and him, it's kind of amazing. I mean, he's learning to become a ranger, so clearly, come on. Really long journey we had to get through. Um, took some rolls. I think we only failed it like twice, right?
We had started to condense the rolls down,
Mm-hmm.
so we failed once, but that counted for 2 days. No,
Okay.
we did fail a second time, but we had to we failed a second time, and then we really rationed out what we had for the third day's worth of rations.
And we moved
And
slower
Cody,
that day. That was it. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
You're right. And we got to the warden's tower. Um, now I don't know about you. I like everything about this place. I am in love with so far.
the absolute lore dump, top to
Oh,
bottom.
oh, I'm so glad because I knew that Sirach would be like, forget these pictures on the wall. These are nothing. And so Sirach's following, but Eric is like, I want to know every one of these pictures entirely. But I'm just like, no, Sirach would follow along, and I'm just in my that little back of my head going, please, someone stop and look at these pictures.
And that's where we get, of course, Talroth and Treasure history buffs who did want to actually see what was going on here.
I I love that that's become like a big thing for your characters is that like innate love of history, which I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it really was born out of the joke that you just kept rolling nat 20s on history checks.
What's hysterical is the love of history was actually played into Talroth. That
Hmm.
was part of his character from the get-go, hence the background that he chose. However, that was not the case for Treasure. I didn't intend for her to be good at history, but after like 3 games of rolling nat 20s, archaeologist background, thank you.
Hmm.
Um, After 3 games of rolling nat 20s, anytime I rolled history, because I just happened to have it as a noble, I said, you know what? Treasure's a history buff. This is just
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
It's I love how that can happen where you can by random roll of the dice, you can discover something about a character like that. Have you ever had something like akin to that happen before with a different character, or is this kind of the one of the first times that that's happened?
No, that's happened a couple times with other characters. That's how I discovered one of my first characters and my oldest characters, Nor, who is a paladin. I discovered that he has an insane intolerance of spicy food, but loves garlic.
Some poor con saves.
Some very weird con saves, yes.
Oh, I love it. Uh, and oh, that's fantastic. So we get to the tower, and the tower is filled with a bunch of different rangers. And I want to tell you 100%, Sirach is not because they're like, you're gonna need a guide to get through these mountains. And Sirach's not like 100% threatened, but he's like, I know mountains. Like mountains are kind of my deal too. Mountains and forests. I don't know if we need a guide, especially one of these guides who doesn't even speak common that well. And like Not 100% threatened, but a little bit. Like, I don't think we need them, guys. I mean, we'll take them, but it's useless. Um, I love that. The whole the. Do you remember the name of the woman who headed up the tower?
Hyla, I think was her name.
Hyla. That's right. Um, I loved her attitude of just like it's waterfall, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna get it. Like she's just like,
She was the queen of over it.
yeah. Like we're trying to like obfuscate so much shit, and we're trying to be like information you need to know, and she's just like, oh my god, get over yourselves.
She was over us. She was over everything that happened. We didn't start having good conversation until we started talking about the avatars, really, and the pictures
Hmm.
on the wall.
Yeah, she I don't know. I was kind of ready to tell her like I know we inevitably did, but like right towards the beginning, I was ready to just be like, "Yeah, we're going to the forge," and just kind of, let her go. I did think it was interesting, like with all the information she has and all the knowledge, the fact that when we're like we're going to the forge, and she's like, "That's to the east."
That
I.
was very interesting. I was like,
Hmm.
what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah. That did like that hit me, and I was like, wait a second.
It
Wait.
also made me think of some other things. I'm like, it's to the east, or at least she says might be to the east. But we've also realized that our maps aren't necessarily 100% reliable. And by that I mean Castle Diabolic, for example.
That castle.
So if something like the Forge was potentially to the east and just not on our map, or even worse, is one of these kind of things that just picks up and walks away.
Hal's moving forge, yes.
So it did give me a lot of pause. It's one of those like, oh boy, what are we getting ourselves into?
Yeah. Especially when she was like, yeah, the West, where all the dragons were banished to. Excuse me? Like, we're gonna have to deal with dragons, and we're gonna have to deal with catching up to the wildlings, and like I can just imagine like Saride or Olorun trying to like talk down a dragon and just being like, because you might not need to fight a dragon. They're intelligent, they're smart creatures, some of them. But like a wildling is just going to see that shit and be like, interesting. That's winged dinner, and like it's just going to go straight for it. And so I think it's going to be real interesting, like those
I think the more interesting
challenges.
thing, if it still holds true, I don't know, some folks might have changed things since the level ups, but back at the Tower of La Rochelle, the only person who spoke Draconic was Treasure.
Yeah. Hmm.
Do we really want to let her be the voice of reason?
I have wanted few things more in my life than treasure to be the Lorax who speaks for the trees. Like this group of individuals, treasure's just like, I gotcha. I cannot wait for that to be the case. Um, what was it? So, and that lore dump about the like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Essentially, like to what we understand, there's the avatars are actually 13 players. Their board is Lickdrock,
Like
as
yeah,
far as we know. but only up to the mountains, only so far north and so far south.
And over to the sea.
And it obviously does not go into the continent of Rotom,
Yeah.
but we know that this quote unquote godless land isn't as godless per se as we think, so much as it's a game board.
Yeah. And these people have some sort of control. And it makes me wonder. And like people can get kicked out of the game. Like she was saying that like Affle had gotten kicked out of the game before because he's just basically a contrarian.
Potentially that he had gotten kicked out, but he's still considered a player.
Yeah, well, and they can invite him back. And my wondering is like, so like when I keep hearing about these avatars, what I keep thinking is that like it can be someone like anyone can take up the mantle of an avatar sort of thing. So like he is Affle the Awful, but something might happen to him so that he's powerful, but he dies, and someone else can rise up as the Awful. I don't know if that's true,
I
but
kind of get what you're saying, but I don't know if it's that somebody else rises up as the awful so much as somebody else rises up to the role of player or an avatar.
and
Um,
they just come into their own role.
exactly. That's what I was
Mm,
thinking because I'm sitting here like, okay, we've got these 13 very powerful entities that would be the players. I assume that they are, from what we understand, free functioning, but from what we also understand, very much human to a degree.
it's like Greek gods in a sense.
So, that being said, it is very possible for Athel the Awful to die. Not even necessarily by us, but any other entity that
Yeah.
could potentially just come out and take him out. Like, let's say Velxer had done it.
Oh, that. Well, yeah, because he didn't even want to go into Velxers at all. So I'm wondering, yeah, well, I wonder what their like strength levels at.
Exactly. So, it's one of those like, it's very possible Velxer could have gotten rid of him. But then does that mean Velxer takes that role or somebody else?
And even though they're the players that have risen up to that role, is it truly in them that they are the ones? Like, they're the ones making the decisions, but everyone keeps talking about the great game. And much like the Dragon chessboard, I wonder if, like, there is an inherent magic in them for being the avatars, but I'm wondering if it's like this great game, quote unquote, actually has something like it's a physical thing because it's is the great game. It is definite article. So is it sort of like a thing that is also like implementing these the wills of these players? It's interesting. But also I come back to thinking of my times DMing, and I cannot imagine trying to rally a 13 player game. Like, just
Oh no.
no. No, no, no.
What's funny is Mars and I actually had a chat about this because we were sitting there thinking, what does the number 13 really have to deal with as far as games, right?
Yeah.
And we said, okay, it's technically not a chessboard because the chessboard, at least one side, is 16. So 32, I'm like, I don't think it's a chessboard. I think we're kind of close there. But Mars had actually pointed out that a deck of many things, the pre-used one, is 13 cards. And if you remember, Talroth has been running around with this very funky deck that him and Treasure have been playing poker, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Go Fish with simultaneously. Mind you,
So, because we know that this deck it's called the deck of the Fated, right?
uh, I'm not 100% sure. It's a fate deck of
Okay, it's
sorts.
a Fate deck. Hmm. And it has 13 cards.
We're not 100% sure how many are in it.
But we
Treasure hasn't counted. Well, no,
Okay.
she might have counted. She's probably cheated, so she probably knows exactly how many are in it. But
Oh,
Kez doesn't know how many are in it, but Treasure's probably well aware at this point.
oh my God. But yeah, that'll be interesting on how that inevitably turns out. Um,
It's
sorry.
the other interesting thing is that neither Treasure nor Talroth, although they've played a lot with this deck, has attuned to it. And Velxer was able to smell this deck on Treasure.
Yeah. I remember that. That was not a small little piece of information. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love how good Cody is at storytelling and how good he is at just breadcrumbing things. So you just get that tiny little morsel, that tiny little hook, and but he never gives you too much. He always is just like just a little bit, just a soupçon of intrigue, and then we move on.
Which, going and thinking back to that, both of these items were attained in a long forgotten Dragon Wizard's Tower. And they were items the party was originally probably going to sell for gold.
Oh yeah, 100%. I know that we planned on selling the chess set at first. That was like get rid of it at a certain point, and then it wasn't get rid of it when it started playing back. Um, well,
And Talroth kept the cards as a funny thing. And like Treasure and Talroth just started playing games with it because she knew how to play and he didn't.
I am really interested to see if we end up meeting Lara Shen. Like, I feel like that's gonna be like every encounter we have is just gonna be, "Are you Lara Shen?" And it's just gonna be like, "My name's David," and you're just like, "Well, fuck you, David," and then we kill him. But
Just because he's a dragon, you can't say that. All dragons don't look the same.
well, we do we have a did was there was a picture, wasn't there, in his tower
There
of what?
was.
Yeah, so we have
There
an idea.
was. There was several actually.
So we know what he looks like. We know what he looks like when he's like hidden in like a human form, but we don't necessarily know what he looks like out of said form, which will be interesting to see.
You don't have to give that deck back. That deck is yours.
Oh yeah, you that. I mean, worst case scenario. Let's talk statute of limitations. Like he lost ownership of that thing, like I don't know, 1,500 years ago. Plus, he hasn't sent anyone to come get it. So, like at this point, possession is 9/10 of the law, my friend. You're good. No one's. You know what? I say that now. If he asks for it back, Sirach is definitely going to suggest maybe you do that. Because I don't want to fight a dragon,
But
especially an
that's
ancient dragon.
the fun thing is you said it's Sirach wouldn't want to do it, but part of me feels like if this were your campaign one character, you just might. And it's very interesting seeing the difference between our campaign one and two characters and even the choices we would make versus what our characters would do.
How So that's really good to bring up. Let's ask, because we've asked a couple of people this. What would you say are similarities between your two characters? And because I think we can all like, what are some running themes that you can see between the two of them?
They're both blonde. I think that's about it between Cinder and Treasure.
I mean, Cinder and Treasure both did like to drink as well.
That's fair.
Hmm.
Cinder, of course, had that little alchemist thing where no matter how much she drank, she wouldn't get drunk.
Yeah.
But she was itty bitty. Cinder's actually inspired by my best friend Andy.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yes, Cinder was actually inspired by my best friend Andy. Andy is about 5'2" and very thin. and she's very anxious. So that's where I got the idea for Cinder when I just rolled. I'm like, I've never played this class. Let's see how it goes. So I ended up with this very nervous, kind of spastic little elf. Whereas with Treasure, I wanted to do something way more personal. So when we were like, okay, we can actually pick what we are going to be playing this time due to not having the West Marches style campaign,
Hmm.
I said, well, first of all, I never play fighters. I'm almost always a caster, so this is very new territory for me. I don't have to spell mitigate. That was weird. um, and I decided I wanted to do someone that was plus sized for representation because I'm like, I wish I saw more plus sized ladies in the media.
Hmm.
I also wanted to do someone that was very bold. I love tieflings, so I wanted to play tiefling for sure. And slowly but surely, we ended up with Treasure, who kind of did her own thing the minute she opened that door and said, "Sup, chuckle fucks," in the very first
Such a
game.
good fucking line. Such a great line. There was that, and I still will never get over Cinder on her first appearance screaming the phrase "spook elf down." Like that for me is quintessential Cinder.
That was, I think, her first line. If not her first line, one of her very first lines. It was literally Mars and I's first time at the table.
Hmm.
We were invited, and we show up at a boss fight with these two characters we've never played.
Marital issue liches.
And I'm just sitting there like, okay. And the very first thing I see is Matthew's character, Lore Voss, gets dropped by a finger of death. Thankfully, I do know casters, as I mentioned, so I saw that I had Revivify and I had the components for it. So first thing that comes to mind is what would Andy say? And it's Spook Elf in distress! Starts flailing, man down! Runs over, claps her hands like a defibrillator, and just raises him before we have to deal with Spook Elf Zombie next turn.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that was my first game that I played with you as well, and that wasn't even Rothgar. That was a
No, it
different
was not
character I had made
Rothgar.
up.
That was
Ilias
that was
Richrock was his
that
name.
was your cleric.
Oh my God, such
Your Gilderoy
such
Lockhart of a cleric.
I I loved him. His Gilderoy Lockhart, his Zap Brannigan ass, his I am so great. Just ask me about it. Like, oh my God, I love that kind of that. That's such a fun little character to play. I really enjoyed. Like for the two times that I got to play him, because there was one time that was with you guys, and then I think it was the epilogue episode because
Yes,
Rothgar
which
passed
Mars and
away.
I were, yeah, Mars and I were in. You played him. We didn't even know where he came from. Like, were you on the ship? The ship was blown up. How did you survive?
Yeah. Oh, this is a really good question. I'd love to get your opinion on this. Since there was talk of players, what would the archivist be called? Sirach the, like, Athel the Awful. So we talked about this. I think it was Sarai the Glamorous. We even were definitely like, that Rothgar would totally be, Rothgar the Diplomat. That would be like the avatar he came up to be. I didn't necessarily have something specific for Sirach. I kept trying to like play into his abilities, and I just kept going back to that incredibly B-list movie Jumper with Christian Haydenson and Samuel L. Jackson, where he just like can pop, and I feel like that's gonna be end up, especially when I get that ability, is just gonna be Sirach. It's just poof 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 poof.
I don't think it's even necessarily just abilities, because at least that we've seen of the definite articles that we've met, sometimes it's the personality, like the awful.
Hmm.
So for like Treasure, I remember seeing the archives where you guys were talking about just this. I thought the Defiant,
Good. I like it. It's very nice.
simply because really one of the things I've noticed that's a continuing pattern with Treasure is when somebody tries to make her do something, it's like, well, make me.
Yep.
And it is a continuing pattern for her. So the Defiant seemed to work. So even if it's not just in abilities, but so much who you are as a person at the core. And also, some of these aren't necessarily positive.
Hmm.
Like Hyla said, some of them are given to you by other players. So it could be something like
The
the
Tyrant.
coward, the tyrant,
Yeah.
the awful, you know?
Hmm. I feel like that's. I feel Sirach is afraid that's what he would definitely be called. Is the coward.
It could be a fear thing, but it could lead for some very interesting moments for someone like
Hmm.
Sirach with that fear, because I see Sirach and I start thinking of some very interesting potential Neville Longbottom moments for him in the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping he gets to that level because I definitely, especially like episode one, I played him as a jumpy, flighty bird boy. Like he's just like whoop, gone in the rafters. Like he was scared, and so I I do look forward to seeing him grow into that because he took a step into what he thought was that with the hobgoblins the first time, and then he paid a heavy price of almost dying, and I think that put him back into the oh oh I'm a small weak little bird boy, and so it'll be interesting to see him get to a point where he is able to face that and overcome that.
And it's funny because I feel like Sirach has honestly the best possibility of overcoming that with someone like Talroth.
I I agree 100%. Go on.
And then we have, Talroth, what would we call him? I know, like before, there was the jokes about calling him the imaginary.
Yeah, the who is that again? The not necessarily there, you know.
And it's interesting because Talroth the what? Yeah.
Darata, huh? He's still here?
and,
Where's he at?
and I do love the running jokes with Talroth, but Talroth, especially, we got to see a few weeks ago that much deeper center to his character, which was beautiful. And that's why I feel like if somebody's going to give Sirach that push that he needs to achieve less of that cowardice, I feel like Talroth would be a fantastic character that could potentially push him in that direction.
I am really I'm really enjoying the friendship that's ending up that has been bubbling that has been like pushing up between Talroth and Sirach. Because like I feel like when it comes to like going on a stupid crazy adventure, like Sirach it's like Sirach and Olaroon, let's go do something stupid. Like that's what it ends up being. Or let me tell you of my wise ways. Also, I'm 3 years old and I'm a bird person, and so like I love those little things. And every time it's Clever Stitch and Sirach, it's the Sylvester and Tweety show, but I really love this this friendship that is popping up between Talroth and Sirach, because it like especially those deeper moments, and just this last week we had a really good one talking about his brother and what he's gonna do and what he has to do vis-a-vis the swords and fighting for the greater Gale.
And I like that. This is one of the things I really enjoy about this game is the connections many of the characters have started to build with one another. Um, and not even just romantically, because we do have that romantic connection between Thosin and Sarai that's beautiful, but there's other connections besides just romance that are still just as deep and fleshed out. We have that interesting mentor and student relationship going on with Talroth and Sirach. This kind of best friend girls that understand each other relationship with Sarai and Treasure, and then the drinking buddies, but still definitely have each other's back buddies that Treasure and Talroth have going on, and even that crush that Olaroon has on Treasure.
I don't know if it's a crush, um, but even then, we also have um, those same sort of relationships also mirrored in other characters because you were talking about the mentor and the mentee, and that also a lot. It shows it a little bit further on with Saride and Olaroon, where it's the mentor and the mentee, but the mentee is kind of like, I'm at the point where I think I got to make my own decisions. Like they're like I got to trust my own gut on these things, and the drinking buddies and the like friends who's got each other's back. The same thing with Fable and Sirach. They've been friends for a real long time, and they got drunk, and that was a real fun episode over at Four Point Farms. But the idea that these are like you're right, they're really like nicely fleshed out relationships, and it's great to be able to see them in a game
And
like this.
I agree. And what I love about this, because I've always heard, things where people say, I don't want to do romance in a game, or having a romantic relationship in a game can take away from the characters, and I've seen cases where that has been true. Romance is very, very difficult to role play, and you have to understand your limits and the other player's limits and what you guys are okay with. um but I feel like these relationships, be they romantic or not, are just as deep and important, and it's interesting to see that because it shows you can still have a very impactful relationship whether it is romantic or not.
Indeed, I've seen it a lot. I mean, especially in television. And I say nowadays, but it's been forever. If there is a male and a female lead character, there is romantic tension. That's and it's just always it's so ubiquitous in storytelling and in television and all of that, and it's led to this weird belief that there are people who truly believe that like no, men and women can't be friends, and I'm just like I don't know if that's true.
Concern.
Yes, because
um
because it gets this weird thing like the entire basis for the friendship is on a farce, and you're like no, you don't really want to be friends, and I was like no, I kind of want to be friends with these people, and it's I don't know.
I know that like some folks asked me like on the aside if Treasure had anything for Olaroon, which is a good question considering Olaroon has really been after her, and that fantastic um mating dance that Sirach put on.
Chef kiss.
And the answer is I'm actually not 100% sure. The more I've thought about it, Treasure does have a small crush on Talroth, but it's that feeling of this is my best friend that I'm sure all of us have been for. And this is the first time Treasure has gotten to choose who she wants to date or not.
Hmm.
So she's got a bit of a crush on Talroth, but hasn't really pursued it because the other thing that's weighing really heavily on her is it was romance that got her into this mess in the first place. So even then, it's one of those situations where she's a little more unsure of how she wants to handle any of that.
So it's interesting. I wouldn't even say it was romance that got her into this situation as much as it was a lack of romance. There wasn't any, like, I mean, I say it, but there wasn't any whining and dining. There wasn't any, like, hey, come see this cute puppy that I have. There wasn't, any of that. It was just, you're marrying this person. And so, oh, I did this to Talroth and I'm going to do it to you now. Okay, so like I wonder if in Treasure's head, so it was this lack of romance that put you in this situation. And so you've it's almost a fear of you left to pursue this specific goal of being your own person and making a name for yourself. And the romance now, or the possibility of romance, is a fear because you left to do this thing and you're feeling these romantic feelings and you're wondering, is that just going to put me back and set me back in that same place where I was? And now I'm going to be someone else's. Not that Olaroon or Talroth would treat you in that way, but just that mental barricade of, I can't give in to this romance because I have a plan and I have a want and I have a goal. And I don't know, maybe something like that.
It's interesting you bring that up because I do feel that's part of what's going on in her head. Is you're absolutely right. The lack of romance is what caused it. But in her head, that's probably much of what she's experienced as actual romance. That's what she's
Interesting.
been told, that that's romance.
The whole
And
you'll learn to love each other sort of thing.
exactly. So, in honesty, she probably hasn't experienced actual romance. So for her, it's a very foreign idea.
That's interesting. I didn't look at it that way. That's really fun.
It could bring for actual very interesting role plays later, whether it be with Talroth, Olaroon, or even Owen Duskwood.
If we ever see him.
If we ever see him, because as Cody had mentioned, the Duskwoods are kind of one of those coin toss families of they're either incredibly cruel or incredibly sweet. And we don't know which of these two Owen is. In fact, there was a joke between Caitlin and myself that she could have run away from her dream man and never know.
That's a good point. That's interesting. I like that. Maybe.
It
Oh my
brings a
God.
lot more brings a lot more depth into what would typically be the romantic princess trope, huh?
Could could you imagine if he doesn't know that this whole thing is going on, and so he's just like pursuing other avenues with no idea that his parents are trying to do this, or B, like he ends up being the person who stops all of this. Like we somehow get in touch with him and he's like, this shouldn't be, and like puts a stop to, like, foot down, puts a stop to it. Sorry, this is the archives and I like speculating. um
Sorry, had a hiccup.
yeah, okay. You froze for a minute and I was just like, I've gone too far. I've sussed
No.
something out.
No, that would be super interesting though if at some point down the line we are actually able to communicate with Owen Duskwood, and if he does happen to be a good, genuinely nice person who doesn't know that any of this is going on.
And like, what is that? That'd be an interesting interaction entirely, and like just Treasure realizing the kind of person he is, and he getting closure and not know. So, that being said, I think we are getting close to time, so I would like to ask you a question.
Sure.
What are you what are you expecting, or what are you excited about heading into these mountains and beyond to the west?
I'm excited. Honestly, like Kez is excited to see how Wyatt takes this, considering he's having kind of a crisis of faith as well. We're seeing a lot of that depth and change in some of these characters, like Treasure, where we got to see some of that depth of the consequences of our actions. We're actually seeing some of that out of Wyatt too, and I can't wait to see how he takes it in comparison to her. Another thing I'm excited for is dragons, because it's not D&D without the dragons.
Yeah, what was he? What was Cody talking about? The true Dragonborns were over that way too. And that seems
Yep.
like it's going to be really awesome. Um, yeah, Kez, I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us today. It was amazing having you here on the archives. I think we had some excellent conversation, and I hope you agree.
Thank you so much. I was very excited to be a part of this and explore some of Treasure's character, and I can't wait to get back to game and explore more of her.
I think it is going to be yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be some great times. I look forward to Monday. I remind everyone, of course, be sure to show up tomorrow for Diablo 3, Sunday for Mass Effect Andromeda, and then, of course, we'll see you on Monday for Disasters and Dangers. Uh, Gosh, we really need to come up with like an outro, like a tagline. Uh, have fun, y'all. Be awesome people. Bye.